The next freedom we're going to take a look at is freedom of religion, and the Wisconsin versus Yoder case that you read about coming into this lesson really gives a good introduction to the whole idea of what the freedom of religion in the First Amendment entails, because it's really a two-pronged freedom in essence. One telling the government what it cannot do, and then one telling the citizens what they can do. And so let's start off with the Establishment Clause, which basically says the government can't have an official religion. So Pennsylvania can't have an official religion of Catholicism, let's say. And it also says that the government can't pass a law or take any action that either helps any religion or hurts any one religion. And so that's the Establishment Clause. And when you take a look at some cases we're gonna see in this lesson, this will become more apparent of the restrictions put on the government. That tells the government what they can't do. Now the second portion, the Free Exercise Clause, tells citizens what they can do. And it basically says that people have the right to worship as they choose. And so you could pick out any thing to worship. Okay, and it doesn't have to be an established religion. You can make up your own religion where you worship a bottle of disinfectant. Okay, and that's your God, and you worship it each day, and you can do that. And the government can't tell you that it's wrong. So we're not just talking about free exercise in the traditional religions, like if you're Jewish or a Christian or a Muslim, any of those traditional religions. It really can be anything else too. And so in the United States, we kind of have a gray area in the sense that some things that one people may call religion, other people may view as a cult. But either way, as long as you don't go outside the boundaries of the law, then you're okay. Okay, and we look and say, okay, well, what if religion conflicts with criminal law? There are some situations where that's okay, and there are some situations where that's not okay. So, if religion conflicts with criminal law, people can still be charged with a crime. In other words, you have free exercise rights, but that doesn't mean that you can do anything you want within religion. For example, human sacrifice is not permitted. You can't hide behind freedom of religion to justify human sacrifice. Polygamy, in which people have multiple spouses, is not protected by freedom of religion, even though Orthodox sects of the Mormon religion, years and years ago, actually polygamy was part of it, but that's no longer part of the religion, and so either way it wouldn't be allowed. Sex between adults and minors is not permitted behind the guise of freedom of religion. And that's where you kind of get into cults sometimes. You take a look at that. But the whole idea is we have this separation of church and state, which is not found in the Constitution at any point, but was more a term that was coined by a letter written by Thomas Jefferson. And it's a concept basically in which the government should have very minimal interaction with religion. And there can be situations in which that entanglement becomes too much. For example, in the state of Florida, in the early 90s, a Santeria church wanted to build in Florida City, and the Santeria church includes the ritual sacrifice of animals within some of their religious ceremonies. And in response to this church planning to build in this city, the city of Hialeah, Florida, passed several laws prohibiting animal sacrifice. And so the church sued, saying that their freedom of religion, the right to free exercise, was being violated by these laws. And the U.S. Supreme Court agreed and invalidated those city laws that outlaw the animal sacrifices, because a law can be something that infringes upon the right to religion as long as that's not the purpose of the law. But it was a pretty transparent attempt by the city to, and they actually use the words ritual and sacrifice in the laws. And the central purpose of the law was basically to keep this church out. If the city's primary purpose was to protect against cruelty to animals, for example, then they could have written the laws more specifically to deal with that. But they basically wrote the laws that covered only these animal sacrifice practices in these Santeria religious ceremonies. And so that's a violation of separation of church and state. Cantwell versus Connecticut, which goes back to the 1940s, in which two men were arrested for inciting a riot because they went into a Roman Catholic neighborhood and played a record which attacked Catholicism. And so they were arrested, and they claim that the city, or the state of Connecticut, I'm sorry, they're requiring of a permit to solicit donations from people violated their freedom of religion. And so the courts found in favor of the Cantwells and said that it's unfair, and the government cannot place special requirements on people engaged in spreading a religious message. That's harming a religion. And that you can't charge people with inciting a riot just because they're going into an unfriendly environment to spread their religion. And so that was a famous case in religious freedom history. And then in Pittsburgh in the late 80s, the city of Pittsburgh and the Allegheny County in particular had both a nativity scene and a menorah outside the courthouse. And people challenged the display of these two symbols because they said it was violating the Establishment Clause, that the county was favoring one religion. And they actually got a split decision on this because the city put the nativity scene by itself, which it wasn't, like a previous case in which the court had allowed a city to display a nativity because it was with other seasonal decorations, like a Christmas tree and everything. But the fact that the nativity scene was on its own said that the display was for religious purposes. So they said that's no good. The menorah, on the other hand, was placed next to a Christmas tree and a sign saluting liberty, and the court said that, hey, this recognizes the holiday as part of the same season. Okay, so basically the precedent set was that as long as you have competing religious symbols together, a city or a county can display what would be considered religious displays, as long as everybody's represented, or as long as there's competing religious displays. But you can't just put a nativity scene out there and not violate the Establishment Clause.